Every powerful man faces a breaking point. It's the moment he realizes the world will not save him, will not reward him, will not care. Sympathy dries up. Understanding never comes. Applause falls silent. What remains is a truth so sharp it kills the child inside him and forces something else to be born. Machiavelli understood this transformation better than anyone. Living in the blood-soaked politics of Renaissance Italy, he saw that power begins the instant a man abandons the illusion of fairness. People do not care about your pain, they care about their advantage. They praise you when it profits them, betray you when it suits them, and forget you the moment you stop being useful. And if you build your life on the hope of being cared for, you are building on sand. Because when the tide shifts, and it always does, everything collapses. Only the man who accepts indifference can rise above it. Power begins when you bury the fantasy that someone will carry your pain. No one is coming. The question is no longer, why won't they help me? But what can I build from this silence? From that moment, your posture shifts. You stop broadcasting wounds. Your silence itself becomes a fortress. This is the essence of Stoic power, to suffer without theatrics, to endure without applause, to bleed without an audience. Most people, even the strong, can't resist turning pain into performance. They hint, complain, and chase pity disguised as honesty. But the Machiavellian mind knows every display of suffering is a transaction. Show your wound too often, and you cheapen yourself. Strength is not about feeling nothing, but about revealing nothing unless it serves your strategy. The world rewards strength, not need. And the fastest way to grow strong is to act as though no one cares, even if part of you still hopes they might. That shift creates presence. You stop delaying your evolution. You stop waiting. You learn to walk through fire alone. And ironically, when you no longer seek care, people begin to notice you. When you stop trying to be understood, you become intriguing. When you stop begging for loyalty, people chase your approval. Because indifference, real, grounded, Machiavellian indifference, is rare. Pretend indifference is loud. True indifference is silent. And it unsettles people. The man who carries scars without explanation, who keeps his pain as a weapon, is the man others begin to fear, and then follow. As Machiavelli himself would say, stop advertising your hardship. Use it. Every time you're tempted to complain, remember, no one cares. And that is not tragedy, it's liberation. Once you accept it, you stop over-explaining, stop apologizing for ambition, and stop asking forgiveness for being ruthless or focused. That's where the Stoic merges with the strategist. Losses become private, growth becomes invisible, ambition becomes surgical. And one day, while others crumble under ignored expectations, you rise from the silence like a ghost that fire could not touch. You didn't need applause. You didn't need pity. You didn't even need company. You needed only silence, because silence taught you the truth. Power belongs to the man who doesn't beg for care. Yes, it's difficult. You will be tempted to explain yourself, to seek connection, to rage at being unseen. Good. That means the weak part of you is dying. Let it die. What remains is the man who rises not because someone lifted him, but because he dragged himself upward by sheer force of will. That is the man people remember, not the one who cried the loudest, but the one who never flinched. The world doesn't care about your suffering. But it will care about what you build from it. If you use pain to harden, to sharpen, to rise in silence, you become the kind of figure Machiavelli admired, untouchable, unpredictable, unforgettable. Here's the paradox: the moment you stop needing to be understood or cared for, you gain influence. People want to be near you, because they sense what they lack: internal authority, the quiet stability of a man who buried his need for sympathy. That presence shifts rooms, unsettles the weak, and makes them imitate what they don't understand. This is why Machiavelli wrote for those who sought power, not pity. Pity fades with moods. Power, silent, indifferent power, remains. When you accept no one cares, you stop depending on emotional weather. You stop asking for shelter and build a fortress of stone. You don't need revenge on those who ignored you, you thank them. Their silence gave you yours. And in that silence, you found yourself. Cross that invisible line and the world changes. Not because it grows quieter, but because you stop listening for applause. You stop scanning faces for approval. You stop editing yourself for affection. And in that silence you hear your own mind, sharper, unchained, unfiltered. You stop performing. You start building. The transformation is irreversible. You no longer wake up asking, will they care today? You wake up asking, what must be done? Suffering becomes raw material. Every betrayal, every failure, every moment of invisibility is stone to be carved. You don't cry over it. You chisel it. Machiavelli knew this. The man who expects care from the masses is already conquered. The crowd is fickle. Today they chant your name, tomorrow they demand your head. If your power depends on affection, it is borrowed. But if it comes from indifference, if you lead whether they cheer or jeer, then you are untouchable. That is the only power worth having. Not popularity. Not applause. Command. So when you are ignored or misunderstood, you stand at a crossroads. Most men choose resentment. They sulk, retreat, waste years in bitterness. The Machiavellian path is different. You turn silence into foundation. You stop demanding fairness. You become impossible to overlook. Weak men complain when unseen. Strong men let results speak. The powerful never explain unnecessarily, because attention given too freely is charity, and charity cheapens value. If someone misses your worth, you don't convince them. You make yourself so rare, so effective, so vital that their survival depends on your presence. That is the difference between a man who begs for care and one who commands consequence. When you stop expecting care, you stop bleeding yourself out for free. You turn heartbreak into discipline. Rejection into direction. Being ignored into becoming undeniable. And when that shift happens, people sense it. They feel uncomfortable, not because you are aggressive, but because you are complete. They are leaking wounds. You are not. You are not here to be saved. You are here to take what you came for. That cold clarity is what builds empires, outlasts betrayal, and never blinks when allies turn cold. When you accept that care is never guaranteed, you stop judging people by how they make you feel and start judging them by how they move when no one is watching. That's where real loyalty appears. That's where strategy begins. You see who deserves a seat at your table, not when you're shining, but when you're silent, when you've stopped giving. This is the Machiavellian shift. You become selective. You stop chasing connection. You study behavior. Who checks in when there's nothing to gain? Who disappears when you stop performing? Who speaks your name only when it's trending, and who still speaks it when it's whispered? You file it all away, not for revenge, but for clarity. Because power isn't only about rising. It's about knowing who can stand beside you without pulling you down. That knowledge comes only when you stop needing everyone to care. And then your identity changes. You're no longer the one who was overlooked, you're the one who made it anyway. That story rewrites everything. It turns pain into purpose and enemies into witnesses, forced to watch you rise without a savior. You become something far more dangerous, a man who moves forward without applause, without permission, without the need to be understood. That unsettles people. They believe they're strong, until the clapping stops, until the room goes silent. Then they shrink. But the man who thrives in silence, who grows not despite indifference but because of it, that man becomes legend. He doesn't become cold, he becomes calculated. He doesn't become bitter, he becomes better. He doesn't stop feeling, he stops needing. And that shift makes him dangerous. When a man no longer seeks care, he stops being predictable. He stops being controlled. He becomes the one others depend on, and the one who can walk away without begging. That's when you win quietly, permanently, irreversibly. All it takes is accepting that no one owes you a drop of care. Not the world. Not your friends. Not even fate. For the Machiavellian mind, there's only one path. Validation dies. Control takes its place. You're no longer chasing to be seen, you're building to become undeniable. Not loudly, not theatrically, but with the quiet strategy Machiavelli understood best, shaping reality through silence, through refusal to flinch, through one decisive move after another. You become a sovereign territory, no longer colonized by others' approval, no longer waiting for the world to assign your value. You define it yourself, not for comfort, but for survival. This shift turns your mind into a fortress. You're no longer just harder to manipulate, you're immovable unless you choose to move. That's rare. Most are ruled by invisible strings, the need to be loved, the fear of being abandoned, the desperate hope of being noticed. Those strings pull every decision, making them fold under pressure, betray their purpose, and live as pawns in games they don't even see. But when you accept, without illusion, that no one cares, you cut those strings. You act without applause. You walk away without closure. You build in silence, satisfied by your own progress. And that terrifies people. They can't guilt you, tempt you, or threaten you, because you've already buried the part of you that needed them. Now your moves are cleaner. No wasted explanations, no emotional transactions, no begging for trust. You don't ask for it, you prove yourself. Those who can't see it are left behind. This isn't cruelty. It's precision. Mission above feelings. Purpose above comfort. You don't improve just to feel better, you improve to dominate. You don't rise to be admired, you rise to be essential. That's the difference between the weak and the world shaping. The weak want to be held. The powerful want to be irreplaceable. And when no one cares, the only path forward is to become so competent, so unshakable, so dangerous to ignore that even the indifferent are forced to adjust around you. You stop living for sympathy. You start living for leverage. And here's the paradox: once you no longer need people to care, they start to. Not because they've changed, but because your detachment becomes gravity. Your silence becomes status. Your refusal to chase makes them chase. Because most are repelled by neediness but drawn to indifference, especially when it's earned, not faked. Fake indifference is loud, needy in disguise. Real indifference doesn't signal, it just moves forward. True indifference doesn't announce itself. It doesn't disguise, it doesn't seek to be noticed, it simply moves, forward and unshaken, whether anyone is watching or not. And when a man carries himself like this, people can't help but wonder, what has he seen? What burned away his doubt? Why does he walk as if nothing can touch him? They sense scars that were earned in silence, a strength forged in trials no one witnessed. Whether they admire you or fear you, they cannot look past you. This is the power Machiavelli recognized, not the crown on your head, but the weight in your presence, the silent pressure that makes others uneasy because they feel something unbreakable before them. This is what the realization no one cares truly unlocks. It doesn't breed resentment, it builds a spine of steel. You stop fixating on what people withheld, and instead weaponize what they can never strip from you: dignity, focus, forward momentum. When those belong only to you, your power compounds in silence. You no longer broadcast your steps, you take them. You don't justify your standards, you enforce them. You don't wait for timing, you create it. And yes, at first, no one applauds. But you don't need them to. You've built your machinery in silence, endured without sympathy, and that makes you efficient in ways others will never understand. Most collapse when approval disappears. You don't. You already lived without it. And in that starvation, you found a force that cannot be shaken. So when the world finally turns to you, asking how did you endure, you won't explain. They'll see it written in your face, the calm storm of a man who has walked through fire without witnesses. That is the turning point. Once you accept no one cares, you stop waiting to be saved. You become the disaster they thought would destroy you. But instead of breaking, you are the one that breaks them. By this stage, hope no longer drives you, inevitability does. You don't crave to be seen, or chosen, or loved. Those illusions were burned away in the furnace of silence. And what stepped out was not a man begging for belonging, but one shaping the world in his image. Silence is no longer emptiness. It is home. And in that home, the Machiavellian mind finally eclipses the emotional one. Most people waste their lives negotiating with reality, trying to make the world care, hoping life will reward them for being good, kind, loyal. But the world doesn't pay in sympathy, it pays in effectiveness. Once you abandon the illusion that care is guaranteed, you stop begging and start operating. Your actions no longer tremble under pressure. Your ambition doesn't bend to loneliness. Rejection doesn't change your course. You're not playing their game anymore, you're building the one they're forced to play. And the fewer people you expect to care, the more dangerous you become. No explanations. No reassurances. No hand-holding. You move, and the world either follows, or collapses without you. They'll call it emotionless. It isn't. It's precision. You still feel, but in solitude, and you use those feelings not to complain but to engineer, to plan, to strike. Because Machiavelli's truth is simple, you cannot make people care, you can only make them comply. The weak crave emotional justice. The powerful want results. Accept that justice is a myth, and you gain control. Their care builds nothing. Their sympathy protects nothing. The world runs on power, not feelings. And the first power is mastery of your own mind. Once you accept that care is a currency you can't demand, you stop asking for it. You build in silence, discipline, patience, solitude. And in that solitude, you finally see clearly who uses you, who vanishes when you stop giving, who only claps when the crowd claps first. That clarity is the blade Machiavelli sharpened. Accept it, and you stop waiting for loyalty. You stop mistaking silence for betrayal. You turn inward, not to hide, but to sharpen. And from that sharpening emerges what no one expects from the quiet man in the corner: dominance. When the crowd sees someone who doesn't flinch, doesn't explain, doesn't depend, they start to orbit. Curiosity pulls them in. And the same world that once ignored you begins to whisper, he never begged. He never complained. He never broke. Now that you're unshakable, they offer the care they once withheld. But you don't need it. You built without it. You bled without it. You became everything you needed in the dark. This is Machiavelli's truth: people only care once you prove you don't need them. And even then, their care is a byproduct, not a necessity. You move, win, and endure with or without it. Once people see you've made peace with being alone, you stop looking vulnerable. You look inevitable. And inevitability is the only identity worth having. When someone ignores you, it doesn't wound you, it reveals them. When support is withdrawn, it doesn't break you, it shows their limits. When silence is used as punishment, you welcome it. It's where you live. This is how you break emotional slavery. Apathy becomes training. Every absence made you sharper. Every silence pushed you deeper into the only voice that matters, your own. Now you don't flinch. You don't ask. You don't explain. You enforce. Your boundaries are law, your movement silent, your standards unshakable. And the ones who once dismissed you, they will care soon enough, when they realize they no longer have access to the man who doesn't need them. Because the moment you accept no one cares, you reclaim your power. And with that power, you stop waiting. You stop hoping. You stop begging. Until finally, the balance flips, you are no longer the one looking to be chosen. You become the one they wait for. That is the Machiavellian shift, from fragile dependence to sovereign command. Not a man begging for space in the world, but a man who bends the world around him. And if this truth cuts deep, it should. Because it's the difference between being forgotten and becoming unforgettable. If you're ready to go deeper into these laws of power, watch the full playlist Machiavelli on Power as Design. That is where the real transformation begins.